Do I downsize this window then?
Okay, we're live.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order. We please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Recommended action is approve the following items which are included in the consent agenda. At 6A, the meeting minutes of the September 7th regular board meeting. 7A, appointment of the extracurricular activity coordinators in the 2021-2022 school year. And 8C, special education. Is there anyone who would like to remove any?
I would like the appointment of extracurricular activity coordinators removed from consent.
Any others? So the recommended action will read the same with the exclusion of 7A, appointment of extracurricular activity coordinators. May I have a motion to accept this recommended action? Dan, second Colleen. All in favor? Are we voting?
Yes.
Okay. There we are.
Yep.
6 yes, 0 no, the motion passes. For the good of the cause, this is a time where the Board of Education encourages public participation on school-related matters at board meetings to allow for public participation. Period not to exceed 30 minutes of this meeting has been set aside at the beginning and towards the end of all board meetings. Persons wishing to address the board should please state your name and a brief description of the topic to be discussed. Each person must sign in, if you haven't already, on the meeting sheet, and presentation should be brief. And as a rule, public participation will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Commentary on matters involving district personnel, students, and involving private issues will not be allowed. Presentation should be directed at the school board president. And this is not a time to expect resolution to issues, receive answers to specific questions, or expect the board to debate concerns, but be assured that we will be actively listening to concerns. With that said, do we have anyone who would like to address the board?
Hello, my name is Emily, sophomore here at Lake Placid High School. I'm here to try to address the Board of Education without specifically the hat. Dress code at our school is something which needs reform, although there are necessary dress code like requiring schools, not allowing clothing article, anything illegal. But even so, there are aspects to this dress code which need to be changed. And I'm not here to talk about clothing. I just might know. I'm here to talk about it. The hat policy at Lake Placid High School says that students not include wearing of. Right? Take this down.
Turn it on.
Sure.
That is on the mic.
Well, is that my working?
I was gonna
If
say,
you could
that's-
take a step closer to the mic, you might be in better shape.
Not include the wearing of headwear in the classroom except for medical or religious purposes. On paper, this policy sounds good, but in practice, this policy seems to cause more issues than students focused. First main argument I see about hats is that they are a distraction. Yes, I see this being an issue. I can see this being an issue only when it comes to abnormal hats, such as sombreros, jester hats, or top hats. top hats. Other than that, hats do not cause distraction when it comes to classroom. Another main argument I see come up a lot, that hats block security footage and teachers from being able to write students. This does make sense, only for baseball casts. Even then, facial recognition, according to a study done by newscientist.com, still accurate 77% of the time. That's even with a scarf covering the face. So I think we can all agree that facial recognition. Another argument which I was met with hats is they can offend religious, political, or other ideologies. And this is a solid argument, but this doesn't apply only to hats. Currently, there are no hats which explicitly by themselves offend or go against them. Anything which opposes these will be written or applied to the hat. The same thing goes for clothing, such as shirts, pants, and shoes. One of the lesser important that I do not think applies to school board is one supporting doing your hair rather than show that you are serious about it. This argument I personally thought was ridiculous, because to be serious about school means doing your classwork, homework, not showing up at school. So I think it's more distracting. Lastly, the only argument I was able to find against hats that they are not classy and do not fit in a school setting. This argument really only applies to private schools, where they pay tens of thousands of dollars a semester for students to learn classy business etiquette. But in a public school setting, it is unnecessary for these things, especially when public schools are places for unique tribes such as arts, music, theater, etc. If you are attending school to learn classy etiquette, fortunately, this doesn't apply to our school. On the other side of things, hats can provide many benefits to a student. My first statement is that which hats can keep students warm, especially in our school. Hats by design keep people warm. It's what they are meant to do. In Lake Placid, we have more months of cold than we do warm. Additionally, with COVID procedures, we keep windows open to provide good airflow. This only adds to the already cold building and only reinforces the need for hats. My next claim will be that hats can boost students' confidence in school. Sometimes you get a bad haircut, happens to everyone, or even you were just in a rush and didn't have time to do your hair. Just throwing a hat on is a lifesaver. If someone doesn't like their haircut, a hat will completely change their day for the better. And if someone wakes up late and doesn't have time to get ready to their full extent, then once again, a hat's a lifesaver, allowing the student to come to school with high confidence and ready to have a good day. And lastly, hats are stylish and make people feel good. Hats have always throughout history been a part of people's fashion and style. Not only do they keep your head warm, they also look great. Wearing a hat with a certain outfit is sometimes necessary. Hats allow people to feel good about themselves and really feel comfortable and sometimes on an uncomfortable setting. Hats may not seem like a big deal to you as a school board. And in Lake Placid High School, we value the right to wear our hats and are willing to push to see through that hats find a place in our school. I would like to be invited to the next policy committee meeting to discuss this further and work together on a change. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Abby Light. I'm a freshman here at Lake Placid High School. I'm here tonight to address the school board about our dress code policy. I think that there should be a change in our dress code and hat policy. Here are a few reasons. Starting with the dress code, I think that Lake Placid's is better than some schools, meaning that it's not nearly as strict, but I still find issues. For example, I know people who have gotten dress coded for their shirt showing their back when sitting, but not when standing. Another example is that a shirt on person A could look different on person B because everyone has different body types. And I feel that it is not fair that two people could wear the exact same shirt and only one get dress coded because they can't control how long their torso is. Dress code made stereotypically for girls is to keep the boys from getting distracted by seeing our skin. My personal experience in attending more than one school is that the boys or other students aren't the ones that are distracted. It's the teachers that find the issue enforcing the dress code policy. This also has to do with the fact that fashion doesn't stay the same, it changes. What people wore in 2010 is much different than now in 2021. And I feel that the dress code should change to include newer fashion trends. I would also agree that the hat policy should be adjusted. Many, like like many other students at Lake Placid. I understand that hats should, under no circumstances, be worn during the Pledge of Allegiance. That is just being respectful and always has been. But in other situations, I feel that the rules could be adjusted. For example, other than the pledge, I don't see the issue with wearing hats in the halls or in the classroom when teachers allow it, as long as the hat wearer is being respectful and not taking advantage of the privilege, like throwing it around the room. I have heard teachers respectfully ask students to remove their hat or hood and then say, "I know, but it's the rules." I feel like this shows that some teachers would be perfectly fine having students wear hats or hoods. Even when teachers may not want students wearing hats or hoods, the student can just remove it for that period. I think we can make a difference by working together to address these issues. And I would like to be invited to the next policy committee meeting to discuss this further and work together on a change. Thank you for listening and also your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carly Clark. I'm a sophomore here at Lake Placid High School. I'm here tonight to address the Board of Education about our dress code. I think that it's time we make some changes to the dress code. The dress code policy has not changed since the late 1900s, and as you should know, the style has changed throughout that long period of time. Shorts have gotten shorter, tank tops got more popular, and almost every girl's shirt that is produced is a crop top. Therefore, we should modify the school's policies to fit the modern style. I'm not saying we should completely get rid of the dress code, because some rules are reasonable, like no drugs, violence, or profanity on clothing, or no private area shown. But I do think most of it is unreasonable. For example, there's no reason for my shoulders or belly to be covered. It's just skin. Everyone has it. Not only is most of the dress code unreasonable, it's wrong. How would you feel if you're a little sixth grade girl coming into school excited to wear your new tank top you love so much, and as soon as you walked in the door, you were told to cover up because your shoulders, your 11-year-old skin wasn't welcome in the school building? The dress code is sexualizing girls, telling every girl that goes to public school that their bare skin isn't welcome in the building. Why? Because it's distracting. Because they're trying to teach us how to dress in the real world. Now, I'm a 15-year-old. I should be able to go to school and feel comfortable in my own body. Most girls this age are already getting to the point where they start to question themselves and not feel confident in their own body. And it doesn't help that their 50-year-old teacher is telling them to cover up. I'm a 15-year-old girl, and I should be able to express myself through style. And where would I go? Teachers are always telling us students, be ourselves. I know. I and many others like to express ourselves through style, which we can't do because most of our clothes are not allowed. I'm a 15-year-old girl, and I should be able to wear what a 15-year-old girl would wear, not what a middle-aged woman would wear in the office. Teachers are trying to help us prepare for our futures and prepare for the real world. The real world isn't only about jobs. I think the most important thing they should teach us is to be respectful and kind to others, and I think the dress code is a good step to that. They should not be telling young girls to cover up, but teaching peers to keep their eyes to themselves and be respectful. And yes, the workforce is very important for our future, but not every job is going to be the same. Some require hats, some you have to wear an apron, others you have to wear scrubs, and some don't even care what you wear. All I'm trying to say is the real world isn't all formal. In the real world, you should be yourself, express and respect yourself, respect others, be kind and considerate, and even though it doesn't seem that important or like it would change much, you think that the dress code would be a good step to teach young students these things and help us prepare for the real world. And I hope this helps prove that. I'd like to be invited to the next policy committee meeting to discuss this further, but thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dr. Computer, everyone. My name is Emily Costas. I'm 15 years old and I'm a sophomore here at Lake Placid High School. I'm here tonight to address the Board of Education about our dress code policy. About a week ago, me and my peers were called to a meeting in our school library addressing some of the school rules that some students need to be reminded of. While we think this meeting was necessary, there were a few things that did rub us wrong, honestly. This is the dress code policies. Let me remind you, I'm not here today to suggest we completely ban the dress code, rather modify the dress code that hasn't been rewritten in 20 plus years. Growing up in Lake Placid School, I remember coming to my first week of 6th grade, where we all had a class meeting. In this meeting, we went over the dress code. The teacher was reading the male portion. The only thing they had to worry about was their shorts covering their underwear and making sure that graphic t-shirts were, too graphic. When it was time for the female dress code to be read, I was a bit confused when our list of mandates for so much longer than the management. I learned that our butt, breast, and belly, or as the teachers called it, the 3 Bs, should be covered at all times. I also learned that spaghetti straps were not allowed. While I completely understand and agree with the graphic t-shirt rule and the body parts that can't legally be exposed remaining covered, along with undergarments being hidden under our clothes, I disagree with other parts. Let me explain. We were told we can't wear these things because it is inappropriate and distracting, and that parts of the dress code were created to reduce the wandering of peers' eyes. I found it odd how my shoulders and stomach skin became distracting to anyone, for these are my skin. On 90-degree days, wearing a long t-shirt that meets all of the dress code requirements is not only unstylish, but very uncomfortable and hard to do while still showing self-expression. If the school is really trying to protect me from the quote wandering of peers' eyes, they will not try to hide my skin, but educate students on how to respect others regardless of what they're wearing or not wearing. If the school is really trying to protect me, they would understand that if they monitor my skin that is already over-sexualized, there will still be dirty jokes made and I will still be focused on by the wandering eyes. Why is my stomach skin so sexualized? These parts of the dress code are not to protect me, but to protect the intrusive thoughts entering the minds of others when seeing our skin. I'm sure some of you have kids yourself. How would you feel if a 50-year-old teacher told them their stomach and shoulders were distracting? I would imagine it's pretty uncomfortable. And just as uncomfortable as you feel, so do we as girls, as kids, as students, and as impressionable people. If we want our schooling system to move on to raise respectful young individuals, then it starts with showing them how to respect others. And that means not hiding me and my skin, my flesh, my bone, but educating the uneducated and putting a good impression into the world. I would like to be invited to the next policy committee meeting to discuss this further and work together on a change. Thank you for listening.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. On behalf of the board, I want to thank you all for coming tonight and speaking, promoting your beliefs and opinions. We'll be taking up this discussion in the later part of the board meeting under the discussion section. So we thank you again. Okay, thank you. Moving on to reports, treasurer's report.
We're going to have it for you. Of the same old when it comes to the treasury report. Really, in each line, operating funds, a little over $300,000. Insured cash sweep, that's about $6.7 million. And that's kind of split half and half between our operating funds and our capital funds. We still have about $3 million left in our capital projects fund that will eventually be dealt with once the project closes out. So we'll have to make some decisions as to what we're going to do with the leftover revenue. At this point, I'm pretty confident to say that we don't have $3 million left in expenditures when it comes to the capital projects. So, and I brought this up in the previous board meetings that at some point we'll have to decide, do we just reduce our bonds and in essence give the money back when it comes time to move the band into a bond, spend some, in furniture and things like that along the way before we close it out. Hopefully that discussion will be in the next few months, not in the next year, but we're not there yet. We're still waiting for 2 more contractors to submit their final paperwork.
Do you have restrictions on expenditures?
Yeah, I mean, it has to kind of be tied to the scope of the capital projects. I mean, there is some leeway there. Talking to Callie at Mosaic, and she was kind of in the same ballpark, about $3 million left, and I don't think we have $3 million worth of expenditures that would totally fall under the project. But when we get to the operational meeting committee review, we'll talk about some expenses that might be coming up with regards to the building.
Thank you. Any questions on the treasurer's report? If not, right on to the budget status report.
I decided to give you a little different look. I think about a year ago, just about a year ago, I gave you a look like this at the very beginning because this is the time of year where, truthfully, there's more expenses than revenue coming in. But when you look at the expenditure reports, it's all favorable at this moment in time. It really is, and I've said this repeatedly, it's really a snapshot when these reports are generated as to our expenses. You can see that it's favorable by, it's a difference of a little over $2 million for year-to-date expenditures, and salaries are favorable by $1 million, but really that's all in the timing as to when things go out and when they get accounted for. So at this point, it's really more about showing you some numbers and saying that's it's true that we have $1.5 million, $1 million in our expenditures, but we're still very much early in the process. But right now, 2 months in, things are looking well.
The visuals are really helpful again, Dana, to have it in this. format.
Yeah, we'll go back to the other one, and as I said before, if there's a style that you want to see it differently, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to change it up so that you're getting a different look. Just to see, throwing in, if you notice with these in the bottom right hand corner of the documents, it kind of gives you a little historical. You can see in 2019 up until the current year, so you can kind of see that and where there's differences and all that. And the perfect example in 2020, you see equipment, so it's like $6 million compared to 21 and 22. We're just into it, so that's really, again, cycling. It's looking at complete years versus snapshots.
That's really helpful.
Revenue, we're in the same boat there. We're just starting to collect our property taxes. We're a couple weeks in. Just to show you, I mean, the year-to-date revenue, a little over $16 million. Variance to the budgets, they're saying $13 million. So when you look at that and you look at projections, you're like, oh my goodness, we're going to be projecting a huge surplus in revenue, but that's not the case. Our revenue is pretty set. There's some variations of a couple $100,000, but in reality, we're not going to see a $13 million difference. That comes into really what you see here is, generally speaking, we start to show our revenue when we post it in September. This year, we posted it at the end of August when the tax bills just went out. So when you look at the historical, they don't generally see something in August compared to, and that's why they project a huge surplus, is because of when we put it up in August, we typically see it. But really, after the month of September, you'll see that projection change because we're catching up to the information. Is what it comes down to. So we're not going to see a $13 million variance in our revenue. But this is beyond that. We're pretty much on track for where we typically are. We don't really see a lot of state and federal aid at this point, and that's what you're seeing. And right now, most of our revenue is stemming from we're either pulling in stuff that's finishing up from last year, or our property taxes are coming in. Questions on the revenue side?
No.
Thank you.
Dana.
Thank you.
Next up is Health and Safety for Buildings and Grounds report. Dana,
I guess that's me again.
that's you.
So one thing we started doing when Tim came on board is I started meeting with all the department heads on a weekly basis, and we instituted a operational committee where all the department heads plus the administrators meet on a monthly basis. We started that in August. We've actually had 2. But it's a nice way for us to really just touch base and basically have a better sense as to what's going on day to day and week to week rather than meeting whenever. So I'll give you a little highlights of things that we've talked about over the last few weeks that fall under this. In transportation, one thing that came up and we've talked about is looking at hiring at the very least a part-time mechanic. We have a full-time mechanic, and one of the things we are concerned of is what if type of scenario. Pat is out, Pat has to take time off. We don't have that mechanic. In an emergency situation, we do have the town there. We share the same space, and we do have mechanics there. So in a pinch, we can use that. But that's one thing we want to look at is possibly hiring a part-time mechanic, or even how to stretch that to a full-time so that that person can fill in and building and grounds and things like that, and have someone that can multitask, whether they're filling in as a driver, as a mechanic, building and grounds. We're just trying to do that in case that something happens. One of the things we are finding over the last few years, we are switching our bus fleet from diesel to gas, and we're finding by switching it, even though we're losing some power in the engines, maintenance is that much less. We're seeing a reduction in our repair costs, and diesel buses are very expensive to upkeep, and the gas is not. So we're seeing a shift there. So we don't necessarily need to find a diesel certified mechanic as a backup. After this year, when we get 3 new buses, I think our entire fleet by July of next year will be all gas. We'll no longer have any diesel buses. Not only are they cheaper to maintain, they're also less expensive in the purchase. So we talked about that. We talked about if you notice, the building grounds people, we did the wall last week. Yes. So Randy said it took about an hour for them to go in, and it looks that much better. And hopefully going forward, that's something we'll just keep on the agenda. Every summer, we got to maintain that as everything kind of takes hold there. In a couple of years, they say that will all fill in. It look like I don't know if it's a juniper bush there, but they say they'll take a few years to grow in. So we looked at that. We obviously the annual talk about the shuttle buses and the parking near the gym, so that when sports teams are being dropped off, ensuring that cars are not parked where the buses are supposed to be parked at. We talked about the late run and bringing that back as well at the elementary and the middle school. Another element of normalcy, right? Running things after school. So far, that's happening. So those are some of the things we talked about in transportation. And at the maintenance side, we just talked about the clutter, things that have accumulated over the years, and start the process of removing the items that have just been sitting around for years that haven't been touched. Starting to clean up inside buildings, outside and around the buildings, getting rid of basically the unwanted stuff, the junk. Looking at how to dispose of any unused chemicals and things like that. So we did a chemical removal at the end of last year for the science department here. So now looking at what other things are there at the bus garage or in maintenance departments that we can start disposing of things properly. We talked about the surplus. You should see probably in the next couple of meetings, we hopefully will be showing you, generating a list of all the items that we want to dispose of, and have you guys approve that, from TVs to laptops to computers to just old furniture and things like that. So we're starting to work on that at every level so that we can reduce the clutter, start cleaning things up around here. For athletics, we're really focused on the track, and there has been some issues with the track in terms of cracking and things like that. We've reached out to Schoolhouse, and they have, and Tim Bonaparte was a landscape architect that we contracted with through Mosaic, and reaching out to the company because it's a warranty issue. It's not a installation issue, but it's a warranty issue. So we are trying to address that hopefully before the winter, so that if you were down there, you'll see John shared some pictures of some cracks and things like that on the track that need to be addressed. So we really focus on that. Cafeteria, we look at getting rid of, disposing some items, a cooler that was basically on its last legs. We brought in ice time to pull out the Freon and then dispose of the cooler, and we replace that with a new cooler at the elementary school at the end of last year, bigger so they can, have larger storage for milk and things like that. We discussed the role of the new cook manager. So Dorothy and I, we did sit down and spent a lot of time as to the expectations of that position and really the direction that we as a district want to see the food service going. And really, I just brought that back to where you guys were a few years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, when you guys hired a part-time food service director, and really the direction you wanted the district to go there in terms of farm to school initiatives, local procurement, more meals right from scratch and not processed. So kind of brought back things that you guys had wanted to accomplish 4 years ago and brought it to the forefront. And Dorothy's very much on board with that. She's already reached out to Cornell Cooperative. She's reached out to other food service directors in the area, which is really being aggressive in trying to get us in a place where we thought we would be when we created the position 4+ years ago. We looked at dishwashers. Both of our dishwashers resigned. We have temporary fill-ins there, so we should be posting for that position so that we can fill that. There's obviously other needs that might come up. If we're looking at increased food preparation and food serving, there might be a need to add some additional help, particularly at the elementary school, to meet those needs and looking at how to address that. Because if we want to create good meals, it's going to take more time to prepare the good meals and not just pull it out of a box and stick it in the oven to prepare. And then lastly, we kind of looked at all the things, all the administrative stuff, and we talked about it. And one of the things that we really stressed on is getting all of the maintenance and transportation on board with the subs software, so that time off is being recorded and being seen. And one of the things it's really trying to address so that everyone in the district is on the same page as to if they are taking a day off, that it's put into the system, trying to make it more efficient, get rid of paper, easier on the back end of reporting everything and planning payroll. So it's one of the things that we've been working on within the FDA and the maintenance and transportation. That's kind of in a nutshell, probably 8 meetings we've had since August. Questions?
A comment, special thanks to the landscaping folks. I like working committees, so. And there's a statement at the end of the information which said, if the board wishes to convene the Health and Safety Committee at any point, be happy to. I'll be the first to say that I don't want to be a part of a committee where it's just sitting and listening, and it sounds like you're doing a lot of great work. And unless there's a legal part that I'm missing, I looked in the law book just briefly and didn't find anything for that particular committee. Unless somebody else has any objections, we can just continue this way, getting reports. I mean, it's a great report. So thank you.
You want to discuss our
Oh, yeah.
meeting today as
Yeah,
well?
sorry about that.
Sure.
Because it wasn't in my notes. Yes, we had Mosaic and a structural engineer on site today because last week, Bobby Graham here found some potential cracks. Well, they are cracks that we think are a result of the order work. So we did reach out to Mosaic and ask them to come up and take a look and do a little review. So they were on site today. Took some pictures. We looked at exterior. There's really in the front of the building is where you kind of see most of the damage. It's on both corners of that sandstone where you can see the cracks. If you go out there, they're noticeable. Not that they're this wide, but you can definitely see there's a crack where it wasn't. So they're going to start the process of monitoring it. They're going to bring in some equipment so that we can test what kind of vibration is going on a daily basis. They're also going to put up ways to measure the cracks from here on over and see if the cracks are getting bigger. They're going to start putting together that information to generate a preliminary report that they will present to you in terms of the damage going forward. That again, we suspect that that is a result of the project in front here. One of the things they talked about is really this whole site is sitting on bedrock, and the work they've been doing out in front is just vibrating right through the ground because it's going through rock. So they're not surprised that there's potential damage. We did reach out to Orda. We had them come over a week ago. Bob Hammond is basically their project director. They brought their contractors in. We showed them the cracks out the exterior. Bobby also noticed some cracks inside and some of the stairwells closer to the gym, so we showed that as well. So that's the process started. Tim reached out to Bill Kissel, and we're starting it on that end as well. So they'll reach out to Mike Pratt. I've notified Gordon Pratt and Jeff Strack from Utica National just to put them on notice in case we have to file a claim. But one of the things that Callie and I talked about that most likely anything that comes out of this, well, if they can deem that it's connected to the project, hopefully Order's insurance will cover it. However, as you know, that doesn't always happen. And whether we put in a claim through ours in hopes of them going after the insurance for the other projects, that's great. But we also do have some of that capital project funds too, that in the short term, if we needed to make a fix, within a year, we do have some available revenue to do that, and then look at going and retrieving that money. But there's not a lot of confidence from me that that will happen. Utica National with the leaks here basically said, oh, we tried, we reached out, they denied it, so we closed the thing. Yes. So Utica did not push the envelope in terms of getting their money back from those reclaims from the roof leak. I think it closed within a couple months. Elmer Davis and their insurance company disputed it. Therefore, they said, okay, we'll it's our loss and Utica National's loss, and moved on from that. But we are monitoring it, and you'll see some equipment coming in. Small stuff. It's all very small monitors. They said they can even hook it up to a Bluetooth and monitor it remotely from their office, so they can kind of get the daily information and track it. And then I know they hope to have to present something to you guys within the next couple board meetings, so that you guys can see a preliminary findings of their report.
Did they deem the building safe?
Yeah, they really didn't say much about the structural integrity. So we discussed it in our meeting before looking at the building, but I don't believe that was a concern of theirs as to where the cracks are and things like that. They were more concerned with some of the cracks that were in the stairwell and possibly leaking, but they also said most likely the cracks back there near the gym aren't connected to the work in the front of the building, and the structural engineer made that comment. But they are looking at that as well.
It'd be hard to believe that it's not somewhat connected, because I know my wife was in the building all summer, basically by herself, and she said it was all day, the whole building just shook and rattled, and everything was, everything was in. Her office is on away from the construction side of the building, so yeah, she said it was just every day, just rattled.
And the $3 million left over from the capital project be used for any costs associated with this? Or is that different money separate?
Yes, it could. So basically, just like we had we'll call it the limestone projects, the emergency $30,000 repair that turned into $200,000. We were able to roll that into the capital project because when the bond was approved by the community, it was pretty open-ended capital projects. It wasn't specific to certain items. It was about repair and things like that. And SED deemed that because of the language of the bond proposal that went to the public, things like this could potentially be rolled in. You still have to follow the SED paperwork and get a project number and stuff like that, but most likely it could be.
More likely scenario, Martha, might be just that the claims come in. And if there's any costs associated with that, we could potentially use that to defray anything on our end, but seems to fall well within our insurance agreement and that of Orda's.
Any additional questions, comments? All right, on just information for the board. There's several items here. The board self-evaluation, Karen, thank you. You have a paper copy in front of you. That's the format that we've used for several years. I'll add that if you have any particular interest in adding questions or subtracting questions, modifying, let us know. I don't think that's a standard. I think we took this from NISBA, did we not?
And I also asked, reached out to Super Eval, they have a component also.
Okay,
That we can look at.
And when is this be expected to be returned?
We're supposed to do it in October.
Extracurricular activity report is an attached file, as is the PowerPoint presentation on the math RTI, which we will be discussing later. It's the ORDA agreement for your reading pleasure, as well as a message from the executive director on the, I believe that's on the NISBA conference, which has been canceled and will go virtual. So now we can all attend virtually, free of charge. Yes, there's some great guest speakers, keynote speakers. So look that over. I believe that's up. That's it. Any other questions? If not, superintendent's report.
Lot to report in the coming few weeks, and also some items that have transpired since our last meeting. Just looking a bit ahead, on Friday of this week, there is a half day for students. So those in the audience will have to dampen their sense of joy in front of the adults, if you don't mind. The staff will have a half day of staff development in the afternoon. The students that day will be treated to donuts and cider from Rolf's Orchard to commemorate the start of the fall season, which is September 22nd. And the staff will also be enjoying some fall flavors from Rolf's during staff development. The focus of this half day is to allow for grade level team discussions and to share some of the logistics that we hope to discuss with the staff following our discussions this evening about the American Rescue Plan. A lot of good things to follow up on. Student drop-off is going very smoothly in both buildings each morning. At the middle high, there's always a bit of wagering amongst the administrative team as to who is going to have their mask in hand and who's going to have to borrow a few from the team. But things seem to be going in a very safe and orderly fashion. Similarly, at the elementary school, the introduction of cones to separate the drop-off points, I think, has really resulted in a very streamlined process that's safe and allows for the clingers to have ample time if need be with mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, and those that are anxious to run in to do so without any peril. So it's certainly nice to see that go so smoothly. Speaking of students generally, I've had a chance to sit in some classrooms, some outdoor spaces, somewhat informally over the past 2 weeks, and just seen some incredible interactions with staff and students. Just the other day, I was at the elementary school and Mrs. Briggs was doing a sing-along with the kindergarten. They kicked off with Three Little Birds from Bob Marley. So I already knew it was going to be a good show. From there, they went into a series of nursery rhymes, and there was much joy amongst the kids. I think the kindergarten's kind of killing it these days, because the day before they went to Tucker Farms, and one student was beaming as he discussed the mining of several potatoes from Tucker Farms. So it's nice to see that field trips are up and running. Kids are smiling, getting dirty, and doing all the things that we would hope they would do. At the middle and high, I've had some opportunities to be in some classrooms as well. I popped into Mr. Clark's social studies around the time of the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and they have tailored a unit around 9/11 heroism on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And this is a joint unit with Mrs. Carlisto. And simultaneously, they're also embedding the teamwork P2 characteristics that we are promoting across the middle high into those lessons. So it's really refreshing to see that the positive behavior traits that we're trying to encourage amongst students and staff are being addressed in a variety of ways and not just through communications from the main offices. Last week, I had a chance to meet with a gentleman named Roger Catania and Sybil Quayle. And they came to discuss their role as the fund leaders for the Educational Opportunity Fund. And the EdOp Fund is making a commitment to the district this year with several initiatives, initially totaling $14,000. Very, very generous of the EdOp Fund. Those include to provide up to $2,500 for college credit-bearing courses, which include bridge courses and dual enrollments. $2,500 to support individual opportunity grants for students who may need expenses similar to those in previous years. To fund teacher innovation grants up to $5,000. $500 for books for young students and their families in collaboration with Tina Clark and her community work. $1,000 for the 5th grade Albany History and Government trip, assuming that that's feasible, along with a trip potentially to Proctor's Theater if the COVID landscape permits such. $1,000 towards a career experience coordinator to organize a job shadow day for 10th graders, and to provide a $1,500 college visitation trip. So we thank the EdOp Fund and Dr. Catania for continuing his good work here in the district and community. On to everyone's favorite topic, certainly mine, COVID testing. Over the past few weeks, the district has networked closely with Essex County Department of Health. And just to give a sense of what that collaboration looks like, there were several mandates that the school had to adhere to in relation to staff, whether they were either vaccinated or could provide proof that they were COVID negative on a weekly basis. We've been able to do that internally. However, Essex County will be taking that testing over for us. Currently, we have about a dozen unvaccinated staff members. The rest are all fully vaccinated. So it's not a tremendously heavy lift for the district, which is very good. Next week, Essex County will be arriving to our school and the other schools in the county on a roving basis, where they will conduct the screening testing for any unvaccinated faculty or staff. The following week, they will continue to do that, but will also then expand it to screening tests for any unvaccinated students whose parents consent to that testing. So by the week of October 4th, if parents, guardians, or students wish to insert a degree of prudence into their attendance in the district, they'll have the ability to have a quadrant labs test. And that test is essentially a swab that's inserted in both sides of the mouth, put inside a vial, and then tested in a bag, if you will, which gives the district and Essex County within 24 hours a sense of if different cohorts of students, if there's a positive, and if we need to drill down and do more specific testing. So it's nice to see more granular testing that's going to happen sooner. And I'm told that within a matter of weeks as well, the district will have 2 ID Now machines. Those machines will allow us to test symptomatic students or staff, and thereby allow us to cut out the need to go to doctor's offices if individuals have symptoms, where we could get results promptly within a day or two to limit unnecessary quarantine and isolation for students and staff. So this partnership is bearing a great deal of fruit. It's taking a bit longer than all of us would have hoped because everyone is after these supplies simultaneously. And the reagent, which is the liquid used to initiate the test, is a hot commodity. So until we get that, we have to hold off. But we thank our colleagues at Essex County for their leadership and hard work on this. Last night, the district and the LPEA hosted a mentor-mentee dinner for all new instructional staff members at Lisa G's. The event was attended by 30 of our staff, think it was a wonderful opportunity for new staff to reflect on how the first few weeks have gone, speak with their mentors and mentees, administrators, and just get a sense of how we can better support and maintain and sustain good relationships in the years to come. So I thank Amy Spicer and Brennan Gotham in particular for really spearheading that effort along with the administrative team. I think it was a great success. The DEI committee will be resuming its meetings beginning on Thursday evening this week via Zoom. And our cross-country team traveled to Binghamton on Friday to scope out the state finals track. And just like to give some kudos to Coach Mel Frazier and our athletic director, John Burdick, for planning a COVID-friendly way to conduct this test overnight by camping so that we could comport with all of the safety guidance from the CDC. So thanks to them, and hopefully their efforts will bear fruit come finals time. And that concludes my report.
Questions?
Which that the girls cross-country team came in second against a field of very large schools that are very, very strong runners, and the boys finished sixth. So the good results for our little school here up against, big schools from across the state. So they were very happy with their results.
Excellent.
Good, thank you. Next up is the linking goals with agenda items. I have some if I don't want to step on them.
I'm not sure how this falls in, but I think students first and foremost, just because of the policy committee, willing to listen to the students and putting their needs and concerns, at the forefront for, changing possibly the dress code. So
I put the students under a presentation almost.
yeah,
So,
yeah, great to see.
yes, yes. Also under students first and foremost is the social worker. We'll be discussing that later. Should I keep going or anybody?
Go ahead.
The community outreach and involvement, superintendent report of the board meetings. I read that, you put that out to the district, so that was great. Board self-evaluation is on there, and also the bullying proclamation that we'll be bringing up later tonight. Finance superintendent's report with the EDOP fund and the ORDA issue that we discussed earlier are all bullet points.
You're referring to the goals and objectives that we just finalized?
Correct. Yes. Hopefully I have the correct ones. I have 15 copies and
It is also a featured item on board docs when you log in.
yes.
I would also do Dana's health and safety report for education, part of the food and nutrition service.
Great. Anything else?
I would just like the surplus in the building thing. Obviously, that was not all within our control, but I'm glad that we continue to run a healthy margin on our projects and not be behind the eight ball when it comes to budgeting. It's nice to have that room to breathe, as it were. So that would be the number 6, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Which currently in the Google Doc says administer or oversee the district's finances adverbally. We can adverb there.
I'll look for that in an email.
Yeah.
Anything else? Joan, you all set? Okay. Just checking on your level of consciousness. Capital project updates, change orders. We have 3 change orders there. Dana or Tim, any comments on
When you
these?
look at those, 2 of them, two of them are minor, about $1,000, $4,000. And the other one is actually a credit of $57,000. And that is more so every contract has allowances built in, so when you don't use all the allowances, it's technically a change order, and they're kind of giving the money back, if you will. What we're gonna see is as the contracts close out, we'll see kind of, these change orders like this. We will have one from Dow Electric, is the unused allowance one that we'll probably see the next meeting or two for that. It's just kind of closing the books on all of it at this point. 4 of our 6 general contracts have been closed. Dow Electric and Elma Davis are the 2 remaining ones. Talking about change orders and connecting that to the order project, because the order project is technically under our districts in SED. They will be sending, they being Orda and their design team, Canon Design, will actually be sending change orders to us to sign so that they can be submitted to SED. They have no financial impact on us. We're not financing the project. But because the project is on property, if you remember, then we had to, they had to kind of get our approval, and SED had to approve the project. In order for Florida to close the project, just like our capital project, you have to have all these change orders submitted to the states. So that's when the time comes to issue a certificate of occupancy and final completion, everything is in place. So they will be sending those documents to us in the near future. So I don't know if you want to see them here like we've done, or we just sign them and send them back, because again, they have no real connection to us other than project is on part of our property.
We put these here as a courtesy, and not that we had the money limit, and there'll be no money limit. So I'm for one, I really don't care to.
Unless we can submit one for the damage.
I'm hoping someone comes in, because I did reach out to Bob Hammond about continuing their work on the sidewalk here on the side of the building and replacing the entire remaining sidewalk from the corner to where they've already ripped it up, all the uneven asphalt. So I did approach that to Bob Hammond about adding that. That would technically, I guess, fall under a change order. Okay. Maybe I drag my feet on signing the change order in order to get a new sidewalk.
With the plan.
Anything else on the change orders, capital project? Discussion. I was going to thank the students, but they cut out to do homework. I don't blame them. So this is to discuss policy 5300.25, the dress code policy. Karen has put the policy in board docs. Them, take it away.
Thank you much. So yes, I also was pleased to see the level of student engagement, the professionalism, and it's really a testament to their, to their character, that this is the method in which they decided to vocalize, which is the appropriate way to do so. So I commend the students for that. Just a few things that I wanted to address that I think are particularly useful to this conversation. And one of them comes from a NYSBA document that I think is outstanding. 126. So compared to COVID guidelines, it's moderately light, but it's legal issues that board members may encounter with regards to their roles. And 2 items in particular that come up in the student dress code that I think are important here. The first says student dress codes must address legitimate educational concerns, such as teaching socially appropriate behavior, eliminating potential health or safety hazards, ensuring the integrity of the educational process, or avoiding school violence. I think the students did an outstanding job in articulating their understanding of the purpose of a dress code. The second is important, and I think more to the point of this discussion at this time. School districts must develop their student dress codes in consultation with teachers, administrators, other school service professionals, students, and parents. This is the part that really, I think, is helpful to ensure it reflects current community standards on proper decorum and deportment. So I'm glad that this is a discussion item. I'm glad the students are able to weigh in. And I certainly think that in light of this consideration, hearing from other shareholders within the district, such as service professionals, students, administrators, parents, board members on this topic, help us define what our current community standards are, would be beneficial. So to that note, we have the full administrative team here. They were not strong-armed here, as some might have suggested. They are here. Yeah, sure, easy for you to say. They are here in part to discuss the next agenda item because our ARP funds, to some degree, really reflects a 2.5-year vision for our instructional priorities for the district. And so it's critical that we address that as a unified team. But the fact that our administrative team is here is advantageous in the sense that we can get some more shareholder point of view on the dress code issue. So if any of the administrative team members would like to speak with regards to either what the student said or any aspect of the dress code, that would be an appropriate time.
I would really like input. I mean, we sit up here and we're the board, but you're the front line, well, sort of the front line folks. And we don't have to enforce the policy. We certainly can look at social standards and go with what we think, but I'd like to hear Amy. Yeah.
I can tell you, I worked with 20 minutes of survey and I think they responded to it. We want to follow this process. We held 2 meetings. 11 students came. They were really thoughtful and interesting, and they wanted to work together with the board and understand the policy. So looking at with them is really rewarding and interesting, and because there's some conflicts tonight, I think that one could come, but there's practice volleyball and that. So, and then working with them and talking with them about, especially the hat policy, really one of the things that the students kept saying to me is that that policy is antiquated and old, and it's not part of our modern society. So one of the things that I found when I was getting ready to come tonight, I looked up on the internet about some different rules of modern etiquette today for hats, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about that, what our role is. So I believe it's our job to educate our students about the expectations in our classrooms, our building, and our society at large. All different types of academic and skills during our time together. We also teach them the softer skills of life, like making eye contact, and even thank you and other parts of polite behavior that are expected in the world. How to dress and present yourself to others in different situations are other important skills we teach and model. This is where the dress code comes into play. We often say that not being able to wear a hat is an antiquated rule, it is outdated and one that should not be followed anymore. And I respectfully disagree with them. American Hat Makers posted on December 1st, 2020. So, and Emily Post's website states that there is important modern hat etiquette for men and women. It should be followed. Both websites agree to many different things. Mostly when men and women, like, they must take their hats off. When you're indoors at work, especially in an office, unless it's required for the job, religious services, performance in a movie, public buildings such as school, library, courthouse, or town hall, the national anthem is being played. And women must take their fashion hats off when it blocks someone's view, as noted above, or you were indoors at work. Interestingly enough, there are a lot less rules for women in this than men, which I really appreciate if they were here. So I support this etiquette. I believe it's part of our job to model it and to have a high expectations for our students. But I see their side as well. They want to talk about it and they want to create change. And I think it's them. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I guess I'll go. Students, it's been something that we've been working on for many years. I mean, even when I was in the classroom, students wanted to change the dress code, they wanted to wear hats. It is
in my mind, keeping them from feeling welcome in the building. For some, it's a barrier. I did write some stuff, so I'm just gonna read, like, make sure that I don't leave anything out. Tonight I would like to ask you to consider tabling the dress code section of the code of conduct. There's work that needs to be done, and I'm asking you to consider creating a committee to look at the dress code. As a high school principal, I have a different perspective on the dress code than my colleagues. Elementary and middle school students do not face the same issues that high school students do. Younger students will wear what you want them to wear, usually without question. High school students are learning to be independent, beginning to develop their own sense of style, and working to become young adults. While I believe that there are a few lines in the dress code that need to be examined, tonight I really just want to focus on one line, which is that our student dress code states, students' dress, grooming, and appearance shall not include the wearing of headwear in the classrooms except for medical or religious purposes. So hats are an article of clothing that not distract any more than a sweatshirt does. You can still identify students when they are wearing a hat. It does not affect the student's ability, and the hats do not affect ability to learn. For some, a hat provides a sense of security and makes them feel comfortable. They also allow students to hide their head when they're having a bad hair day. Hats were allowed last year for students in grades 6 through 12, most of the year to keep students warm while the windows were open. Middle school students were asked to remove their hats in the spring. High school students were allowed to wear them for the remainder of the year. By the end of the year, there were very few students wearing hats in school, and many teachers at the high school said that the students appreciated the change and felt respected. This year, we have gone back to asking students to remove their hats while in the building. We are currently not allowing students to wear their hats after homeroom starts. I have personally spent the majority of my time asking students to remove their hats. I had to send 2 students home because they refused to take their hats off. One returned to school the next day without a hat, the other still has not returned to school 4 days later. Our neighboring districts have different hat policies where they allow students to wear them. In Osable Valley, hats may be worn throughout the building, and teachers may ask students to remove their hats in the classroom. In Saranac Lake, hats may be worn in the hallways, but must be removed upon entering the classroom, during the pledge and national anthem, and upon entering the auditorium or other location where a presentation is occurring. At the Adirondack Ed Center, our past students and students attending CTE programs are allowed to wear their hats while at the center. When our students return from the Adirondack Ed Center, they are faced with constant requests from teachers and administrators to remove their hats. The students are already disconnected from our building, and allowing hats makes our school a more welcoming environment for these students. Many CTE programs are preparing students for a workforce where hats are worn and often required. When we tell these students that we are preparing them for careers and asking them to remove their hats, we feel like we do not value their career path. Again, I recommend tabling the dress code section of the code of conduct this evening. Elections are happening at the high school next week, and our student council will be up and running soon after that. Many candidates are running with the hopes of being able to meet with you to discuss the dress code. You can Google anything, and a quick search will provide you with arguments for both sides of this debate. I've been searching for dress codes from other schools and have found schools that allow hats and have dress codes that ensure effective and equitable enforcement of dress codes. The school staff are empowered to enforce the dress code consistently in a manner that does not reinforce or increase marginalization or oppression of any group based on race, sex, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion, cultural observance, household income, or body type or size. And I have an example that I'll share with you tonight. Last week, we surveyed the students and asked them about their thoughts on the dress code and asked them to convince us why they should be allowed to wear hats. And I have those results, which I'll also share with you. I encourage you to read through all of the responses. Our students have great ideas and specific thoughts about the dress code. Tonight, I focus on the hat policy. But our students ask you to examine all lines in the dress code. They are not asking for the dress code to be eliminated. They are asking for changes to be made that are appropriate for school and have identified limits that are feasible. We have folders for you.
Okay, if I chirp in with a comment.
Yeah.
I took the time, I have 5 adult children that 4 of 5 graduated from the high school here, and I took a poll of the 4 of them. Christopher graduated in 2000 and Jillian graduated in 2011. What the odd thing is, after I'm listening to all this evening, it almost seems like we've taken a step backward as far as we've become more strict. When I asked Christopher, the oldest one, what went on in his years here in this high school up until 2000, they were allowed to wear hats in the hallways, and teachers could individually decide who could wear a hat in their classroom. So many of Christopher's teachers, it was fine. Frank Schlussler, a seasoned beloved teacher here, said out of respect for his room, he preferred that they not wear it in his classroom. And I went down through Jeremy and Colin and Jillian, and they all said similar things. So it does seem that something has happened in recent years that we have become more strict. And so maybe you are all aware of this already, I don't know, but I just felt that I needed to share that it didn't seem to be a huge issue before. And if there was an individual teacher that said, you know what, I'm a little bit more old school, can you please take your hat off? Students didn't have a problem with it. And I don't know, I just thought I should share that. And I kind of agree with all of you that I don't really kind of like pick our battles, so to say. Anyway, thanks.
It doesn't really affect my grade level much. Grade level where I have there's like an express as a mom. As a mom, some of you know, I have, and when they graduated from school, they were given headdress, because that's part of what their career is. There's a lot of dress issues to talk about. Talking about midriff show. There's a culture for a midriff show. So me as a mom, I would always try to encourage my children to express themselves, especially proud of their identity. I can't imagine if those 2 children were here, they wouldn't be given that opportunity to embrace their culture. Now the time doesn't really the headwear, and likewise some doesn't out part of that culture would not be accepted here. It's what the culture here in Lake Placid is. Somebody that came in from a different world perspective. It is definitely something out there, and it is a discussion.
So, first of all, I want to thank the students for coming and speaking. I was very impressed with how eloquently they all approached the board, particularly listening to these 2 back here, how nervous they were about getting up. So they did an absolutely good job in understanding a process of change. I don't know when the dress code was established. I know that when I started 9 years ago, that policy dress code has been what it currently is. And we have worked with that because that is what our guidance has. Our job as adults in the building is to establish boundaries for these kids. The kids' jobs is to push against that boundary. And that's where they learn how it is. And I always say boundaries with love, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. And we are teaching them how to be able to go out into the world and to understand that boundaries in jobs that you're holding, boundaries have in other educational institutions that you go into. And there's boundaries no matter where we are. And our job is to set and establish them, allow them to push against it, just when we need to, and lean into it when we have to, and hold a hard line. As far as the hats are concerned, I think that we are in a very unusual time right now. We are all navigating this pandemic. We are all currently, a year and a half ago, back in March, the governor turned around and said that we all have to wear masks. And we have had masks on since then, as far as the school building is concerned. When a student wears a hat in the building, not see their face. We do not see this. Our children have lost the art of having a conversation, of looking somebody else in the eye. A hat, I believe strongly, particularly with math son in that process. We can't see the face. And in order for us to help kids to develop communication skills, they need to be able to look in. They can't, because either they have this down and they're doing what I like to call turtling, which is their hats on, their hoods up, and they're ducking down and trying to hide, rather than us being able to see them, or they have this in their phone. And so we have a responsibility to teach kids how to productively and effectively communicate. And I think that we're missing that opportunity. It might be different once we're able to pull these off, and we can begin to see people's faces. I can't tell you how often I go outside at lunchtime, and it's amazing to see, you know, a sixth grader who's now a seventh grader, and I haven't really seen their face. It's crazy. So you know, these life skills that we are to teach them is what we need to be working with. The other thing to remember is when we are designing the dress code, and I do agree with Tammy that I think that the conversation needs to continue. I think according to NISBA, and thank you for sharing that, Tim, that we do need to include all of the stakeholders. Teachers also need to have a voice in this entire process. We are a 6-12 building, which is a unique situation. My sixth graders, I still see them as little babies, because they are, comparatively speaking. And we're talking about trying to design a policy that's going to be effective for a sixth grade student, as well as a 12th grade student. So there's a huge discrepancy developmentally in what we're dealing with. And so I think that we need to be sensitive at that as we begin to need to discuss this further. And as I said, I think that we do need all of this.
I think it's great that you brought up the point, and I had thought of this, Teresa, is the fact that there's a mask with a hat. And that's a great point, because I hadn't looked at it that way. And that's a really important thing, I think, to consider. And all you're seeing are two little eyes and nothing else. So that's a great point. I did think it was a little bit different. I certainly commend all the students to get up and speak, and the girl that was referencing herself being a 15-year-old girl, you know, with spaghetti straps or a bare midriff or whatever. And she was talking about those that were distracted. Well, on some level, whoever's distracted should be, you know, have something said, you know, to them. But I do also believe that when you were talking, Tim, about level of decorum, and you're dressing for what you're doing. Are you going to the beach? Are you going to a ball game? Are you going to school, to church, to a wedding? There's different things that you would dress for when you go, and what might be appropriate if you're out, you know, sitting out on the lawn by the beach or whatever. Is that appropriate to be in the school? And as much as I appreciate the input, I do think that there are some outfits that might be better suited for those types of activities. And again, Teresa was talking about, or maybe it was Tammy, about educating our students and getting them ready, and, you know, what would be appropriate wear for certain circumstances. So I feel in that area that I think we do need to be really cautious about what is allowed and what's not, without infringing upon their fashion or whatever. I think we do need to teach them that there are different circumstances and you dress for different things. Anyway.
Anyone else?
I'm
Comments?
curious about this. You want to tell us about this?
Sure, so in the folder, we did a survey and asked students, really 3 questions. One was, what do you think the intent of the dress code is? And that's kind of this orange colored paper. We had just about 100 responses to that survey. I put them all in there for you so you can see. The salmon color paper is the responses to the question. What are your thoughts about this dress code policy in general?
Hamburger?
Yeah. One of the.
The safe answer.
I'm glad you left that one in.
Solid. I didn't take it.
Yeah, I think that helps us get like a full
Yep.
scope there.
And then by LPCSD
consider allowing them to perhaps during the day. When we talk to the students, you know, they were bringing up all different aspects of the dress code. So we asked them to kind of focus in on one thing, which is the hats to begin with, and then, you know, if there are other parts where they would like to explore, they can do that. We did kind of get at some of that in the, when we talked about the dress code policy. So we'll be able to read through, a lot of them. I was impressed that similar to what you heard from the students tonight, that they know where the line should be. They're not asking for the dress code to be eliminated. They're really just asking for some changes. And I think that, you know, we're going to say students first and foremost. And talking empowerment for a year for a theme, I think that, you know, we at least owe them the opportunity to have a thought heard and to work with the students on a committee. Council something that we're bringing back, and this is one thing that I think that, you know, we can give a little bit, make them feel like they've gained a lot. And you know, while a hat may be appropriate in certain situations and not appropriate in others, and you know, you can, like I said, you can Google whatever and find arguments on both sides, and we're going to argue until Teresa and I are never going to agree on that. But it's one of those things that, you know, in my mind, what does it hurt in the end? You know, bellies and stuff like that, that might be a different discussion, and we can talk about that, you know, one line at a time. But I think, you know, at this point, to keep some of these kids in school, you have to give a little bit. And to me, I mean, with you know, family issues and background and stuff like that, for me to say to a kid, knowing that they may go into a career where hats are required or encouraged, and for them to walk into the building and say that's not professional. Yes, it is. In certain careers, it is absolutely professional and required. And so I feel like we're telling those kids that their profession is not valued. And to me, that's not okay. The other thing that's in the folder is, and just an example of another school dress code that I found that I think does a nice job of outlining in a very general way what the students are looking for. And what would be an extremely appropriate way for staff for us to start to explore. And talk about what students may wear, what they cannot wear, and give the reason. I think really any changes that we make or don't make, we have to have reasons why. Right now we're making stuff up, and we don't have a lot of justification for why we say things are the way they are. So I think if nothing else, we need to be on the same page as far as why they're not allowed, or why whatever it is that we're going to question. So I think it's just time for us to take a look at it and examine, make sure that what we're doing is what we think is appropriate, and then move forward.
Has there ever been any discussion or any thought brought up about safety issues with anything being concealed under a hat, where a student come into school? You know, I don't know.
Of course, safety issues are concerned, but I know particularly at the middle school level, there's been concern because now the hats have earbuds built into them. So what's happening is the kids are listening as well as teachers trying to
okay.
do stuff. And you can't see them because they're on the inside of the hat.
Okay.
Nothing as far as weapons.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was ever.
You have a very obvious label with a plus sign and a minus sign so that you can. My son had one, so justify.
Oh gosh. Okay. Okay.
I think that I have watched different outfits and I think some of it is doing a lot of time and it's really hard. I think that there is everyone. We are a small district. That should have a good idea of what are their standards? What are their goals? And if this starts to they not allowed that, then we should have that not being part of the of those discussions. Where that teaching comes from. It could actually open up more discussions. Set up to look at potential career shot. Those are great. I think. And I'm not sure. Or no. These are, we know their plan. We know their plan. Oh,
I can add this one piece, just to extend the meeting that much longer before our presentation. Again,
Mhm.
apologies. So school districts must develop their code to ensure it reflects current community standards. So that implies that this is an iterative process because currency changes as the times change. One approach that I think is cogent that I might recommend in this situation, given the disparity of views on this subject, and the ability of so many folks to articulate such strong views so well. I think perhaps maybe there's room for a subcommittee of the policy committee to look at the dress code with shareholders so that current community standards can be on proper decorum, can be articulated broadly. That would be a way for this to be addressed in a respectful manner to the process, but would also allow the remainder of the code of conduct to be adopted by the board if the board felt that was appropriate.
I was going to make the recommendation that we empower you, so to speak, to put together a committee. How many students, how many teachers, how many staff, that would solely be up to you. But I think what was concerning to me about the 4 students making their statements was they wanted to present to the policy committee. Well, the policy committee basically is a committee that is looking at NISBA policies, is looking at updating. I think this would be a subcommittee under the board almost, rather than the policy committee. Certainly the policy committee would be included, especially the parents and what I want to say, the parents of the committee would certainly be invited to be included in that. And I don't think it needs to be this long drawn out process, but we certainly need all stakeholders input into this. It's comes up almost every year. You start with the 3 fingers and then go to the 2 fingers and and what have you. So I think that's, if you're willing to take on or delegating.
I think it's good that we all have a voice in what current community standards are. So I'm happy to do that.
Everybody okay with that? And obviously, anybody on the board that would like to be involved certainly can be as well. But yeah, I don't want to, while the board is certainly a governing body of this district, the students, teachers, staff, administration are certainly the key stakeholders that make it all run. So we can pass all the policies we want, but which I don't want to do personally. Does that sound okay with everyone? Might be a little more work in the end. I think what I'm struggling with now, we can either discuss now or when we get to it, is what do we do with the dress code policy right now? Is that our policy? We haven't adopted it. Therefore, we have to go off the old policy. Do we allow teachers, administrators to just relax their enforcement of that policy?
I think that the changes that what I saw within the policy itself are really how this big changes. I agree wholeheartedly. It's how students are adjusted for the policy, making sure that it's done privately. We have been since the start of the school year, which is why Tammy has been so busy.
follow the policy that's listed, which is basically no hats. Shirts are supposed to be tucked in and no undergarments showing. Those are really basic trying to enforce. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to teach the kids and continue to teach what the process is in having change happen and that it needs to be done respectfully.
Okay.
Our policy though does say that, it does not include wearing a headwear in the classroom. Anything about the rest of the building?
One would assume then that there's no prohibition against that, given,
I think that it puts teachers in a very difficult position, and I've had conversations with particularly school teachers. They might become the policing, and I think it will have a negative impact on them. Our hope is to create a school that is welcoming and inviting. We want teachers to be meeting students at the door with welcome to math class. So glad to see you. How was your day? How has your morning been? Rather than take off your hat. That's what the policy says. No hats in the classroom.
Is that a change? I can't recall. Is that one of the changes? Or was that last year as well?
that's existing
It's
language.
number 5. It does not include wearing of headwear in the classroom except for.
Right, but was that a change?
No.
No, okay.
And just to contextualize again, like Pandora's box was opened here. You know, I mean, last year kids were allowed for, and so naturally there's going to be a questioning period. And
Right.
Will windows be open again? This
Yeah.
win-
they are, yeah. So
Students are allowed to work. So.
Yeah, and then you're gonna have an argument over whether it's a winter hat or a baseball cap.
Right.
So,
to your point, we could adopt and then just keep the process going and operate under the same. If amendments need to happen at any point, then there's a process for that as well.
It's not about the educational process. This is a really, really important process for our students to learn. And as you can see how well they articulated this tonight. And it happened to become a part of the policy. And it doesn't mean that, and we can't come back mid-year and review or revise, right?
No, yeah, that's current community standards is an evolving discussion.
And especially if we decide we're going to put together a subcommittee, an ad hoc committee, so to speak, that is going to look at the dress code policy. I'm hoping that satisfies, at least 4 students of the students that were here tonight, that we are moving forward with listening to them and that they are important to us. So.
Tabling the policy as the second read and adoption only reverts it back to the
Previous,
we have.
correct, the previous version.
And it's the changes are minor.
Mhm.
Changes parents to families.
Right.
I think too, I think having the students involved in the process is good. I know that the class meeting was not exactly even keeled. I don't know. It got heated at moments, and that's disappointing just to have that kind of behavior. But if we can encourage that into seeing how to make the next big change in a respectful way and working in the system that is established, I think this is a great teaching moment for the students.
The majority of the students from that group, the meeting that you're talking about were being forced to.
Excellent.
So
So
it is something that they are learning to channel, which is. good enough for-
Sure.
I think too, it's almost, if you continue to have issues with behavioral issues with enforcing the dress code as it is now, I don't, to me, that doesn't bode well for getting change to happen.
Right.
If they're going to lead a revolution or something. So I think that understanding that how the student's behavior under the current rulings, affect the changes they can do. I think that's an important lesson as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this all unfolds.
The student council elections are coming up. That's after elections. Organize what we have. We would have more.
Is there a no hat party?
Yeah,
that's
I was going
running
to say.
the platform?
It's not the wig party, that's for
I was gonna say there's dress code was listed on some of their posters.
Yeah, there we go.
Wow.
Is soda and the water fountain still a thing? No, okay. Found it.
Okay, so as far as the discussion on this, we've decided that we'll embark upon an ad hoc, a subcommittee of sorts, numbers to be determined.
Give a presentation on that, very brief, to the
Okay.
board next meeting,
Okay.
on what the makeup of that committee would look like.
Great. And then we'll discuss the dress code policy when it comes to the code portion of this meeting, if that's okay with everyone. What we're going to do with the policy. Okay, thank you. So we can get you people out of here at a not so reasonable hour any longer. On to the American Rescue Plan proposal.
So I did ask our colleagues to just highlight some of, from their vantage point, the impacts that they see as beneficial of the final proposal that we have in relation to their particular buildings. So if you look at the ARP document itself, which is kind of just discussing the shareholder process, discussing ultimately what we're looking at, using the money for, the bullet points are to appoint the 3 building substitutes, 1 for each building, to be deployed though as needed for this year only. Purchase furniture so that we can adequately space students if need be. Purchase tents. And then we get to some specific positions. So the math RTI teacher, that was something that wasn't on my radar until we discussed it at the board, and in talking to Sonia and to John Burdick and to Tammy and Teresa, I'm glad that was brought up, because that's really a cornerstone of the plan now, and I think it's going to have tremendous value. One of the fringe benefits of going in this direction is it will allow Mr. Burdick to then provide supports half of his day at the middle high school for math. So we're really seeing a robust plan to intervene on behalf of students. The social worker, I know that at our last meeting, we had great dialogue about is there a need? And if so, why not contract with Essex County or a different organization rather than having the individual work for the district specifically. And I know Teresa put together a lovely presentation with regards to that. We also looked at purchasing instructional technology such as boards like these over the course of the 2.5 years. The COVID coordinators to try and Sherpa our students if they are in quarantine. And then upgrading our Wi-Fi capabilities. There's patches in the buildings that really need to be addressed. And that was more or less the focus of the plan. So I didn't know that the dress code was going to take such a time. That was naive, classic me, to assume that it wouldn't. So we do have some backup presentations that have been uploaded for your perusal. And more specifically, though, maybe what are your thoughts about the plan as proposed? Are there any things that you would seek clarification on or would like to hear more about?
Are we, excuse me, Tim, are we also looking at a math RTI person for the middle high school as well?
So what we would do is hire for the full 3-year term of the grant, hire the full-time math elementary RTI, and then move Mr. Burdick up and have him take the half-time that he was putting in the elementary school to support middle high students.
Okay,
We're going from a half-time RTI for the district in math to a 1.5.
okay. Is there any funding that would be able to create a full-time person here at the middle high school versus a part-time? Is that needed?
Yes.
Yeah,
But at this point, something is better than nothing. think with the data person, once we're able to really dive into the data and have a complete understanding of where the skill deficits are, and how to use
I mean, I definitely, in the future, I'd love to see one at each building. It's me, but I just think it's a really important part of our curriculum, and I can't wait to see how it pans out in the elementary school and we get a full-time person down there.
My only concern with some of these positions is that we're limiting them to 2024, correct?
Or less, actually.
Right, so let's just say the RTI position, math RTI, we make the changes. Whoever the board members are at that time, what will they be faced with at that time? From a budgetary standpoint, in keeping these positions, we all know that once we tend to have a position, it's hard to eliminate it. And from a budgetary standpoint, I believe there's 3 full-time positions in there that we'll have to, without alteration to the budget, we'll have to increase. Well, without alteration to the budget, we'll have to eliminate at the end of that term. So I guess that's my concern. I really dislike hiring somebody knowing that there's an end. And I'm sure if you're that RTI teacher, you're not really eager to take on the role knowing that it very well may end. So that's my only concern. I don't have a solution to it whatsoever, other than to look at Dana.
I think when we, if the board does believe this is the best direction we create these positions, then they're created with those terms in. So the board would actually have to act when the expiration of those terms come to incorporate those into the budget. But in the meantime, what we may find is that we may have some birds in the hand, and who knows what happens over 3 years, where we have somebody invested in the school that we could plug somewhere else, or there could be a retirement where you could shift someone, or attrition, where, you know, we can consolidate numbers and even utilize our existing staff to keep the RTI going. So there's just so many options. I think if we go in eyes open with these supports, Rick knowing that, you know, and certainly, hopefully, when the expiration of this year, if nothing else, the majority of the board would be here, and certainly I would be, and you know, we'd have a working memory of the intent of this.
Right. That would be my encouragement to the board, the current board, that keep your eyes open
Yeah, absolutely.
throughout the process and look for ways to channel in positions, but without increasing the number of overall staff. I think that would be the money that the plan is submitted, the monies are there. There's, if we vote yes, we're going to do this, you aren't going to have to go digging for more money somewhere.
No, I mean, we basically just have to submit it to the state, and like any other federal program, wait for them to approve the plan and reimbursement along the way.
Okay.
Not like pre-K where you get it a year later, you actually get it that year. So the turnaround is much quicker.
Good. Okay.
So this is obviously a temporary windfall, and I share Rick's concern more from explaining to the taxpayers, you know, bringing on new positions, but the 3 substitutes, I mean, that's COVID related. That is something that's really important right now to bring in. Again, I expressed at the last meeting, I just think the difficulty that any of these building administrators must go through on a daily basis to try to find coverage. I did want to talk a little bit in depth about the social worker position. And I'm just wondering if there's a way, and I didn't have a chance to look at Teresa's presentation, but I've talked with people in other districts, and I talk frequently with Erica Bazzaio from the Saranac Lake District, who is the community liaison. And she has tremendous ideas that she's willing to share with our district as far as what we could do. So I'm wondering if at some point we decide to hire a social worker for our building, if somehow whomever that person is could wear a hat, no pun intended, but a hat that would
Nailed it.
that would incorporate some of what Erica does as a community liaison and community outreach. And then this person also assumes some of the roles of a traditional social worker. So we're a smaller district. Maybe that's possible in our district, that person whom we hire is able to wear two hats, so to say, in one, and we get more bang for our buck and might be able to provide, justification to someone who might be questioning why we're hiring or whatever. But she does some tremendous things with her program in Saranac Lake, with the families, with the community, some of those things that might fall under that heading of the social worker, rather than just the straight social worker that we're all accustomed to. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Teresa, I know you did an excellent job, and all of you did, and I apologize that we're going cliff notes on this. Is there anything in here, if we were to cycle through, Teresa, that you'd reference perhaps, or maybe to speak to specifically?
I'm very familiar with what Erica is doing over there, and I know that Brendan Dothan and myself have many conversations. about school.
Wonderful.
The social worker is an integral part of any community school. And what they're basically do, the social worker is doing is bridging the gap between the school and the families. Our school psychologist, his primary function and her primary function are to do evaluations. They probably do 30+ a year of psychological evaluation for the community. In addition to doing some student intervention team meetings to help try and prevent that, as well as seeing some kids here in the building as well. So their plates are really very, very full. Our counselors that are here in the building are really designated for helping our students become very successful academically here within the building. Putting tools in their tool belt that would help them successfully here. But there also have many other jobs that they have to do, like scheduling and college applications, and transcripts, etc. So their schedules are really busy, as well as just the ongoing daily in and out of kids coming in who are needing help and support, as well as the adults in the building. The biggest issue that we're seeing in our district right now, particularly at the middle school, high school, we see it down at the elementary as well, is absence rate is really high. We're losing thousands of days of academic learning kids. And so one of the things that we see is the social worker jumping in and helping to bridge that, because these are parents who could potentially not have the skills. And so the social worker would do parenting workshops, working directly with the families on coming up with plans on how they can get their kids here. The other thing that we're seeing quite a bit of is school, what we call school who puts their head down on the table and says, I'm not doing anything. And so the social worker would also be part of that as well. And it could be that they have flexible hours so that they can do counseling and therapeutic counseling as well. So it is definitely more of a family and community support is how we see this. And doing that outreach that our counselors and our school psychologists at this point. We have Tina Clark, who does our prevention at the high school, but really contracted 3 days a week with us. Her fourth day is to do the Birth to 3 reading program. And so we have her very little. And Tina will do some prevention outreach. That really is for
Well, you really see this person out in the community and engaging those families in a robust approach.
I think that there could be both components. Teresa just explained, what she envisions the role of the social worker here. And I think you could pull in some of those other activities that Erica has been really successful with in the Saranac Lake District. And again, I just feel that person could fit both roles. And I do think it could be exciting and much needed when you're able to extend what the job description is a little bit. And Erica's willing to, they also have funding over there where they're willing to send her over here to give ideas and whatever. So she's willing to come at any point, to share her ideas. And I think you said you have a family member that.
Yes.
So those are great resources where meeting of a mind could come together and, we could come up with something unique for our district.
The next steps would be to, if the board created the positions, would then be to create job descriptions that then would canvass the vacancy, and we'd want to roll that in Colleen so that we can have that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Anyone on this? I apologize for not having the time to go over these, but I assure you that I've looked at the PowerPoints and very well done, very excellent information. So thank you. Any other further comments or?
I think that if these are, successful, I think that this will put us in a very good spot in a couple of years. And help us to hopefully transition into a normal time, maybe. Maybe that'll happen. I don't know.
It's wonderful that we have this additional funding to play with a little bit right now. So that's great.
Great. Would you like to excuse?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you all.
Or you can stay, you can hang out if you'd like, but I know it's late and you put in a long day, so.
Stay for late
I
meetings
know.
again.
Taskmaster.
This is horrible.
Okay, real quick now.
Yes, hurry up, Rick.
Meeting minutes, these were consent. Just because I'm talking, you can in fact walk out. Don't feel bad at all. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Going to the personnel, appointment of extracurricular activity coordinators for 2021 and 22. The recommended action is upon recommendation of the superintendent, appoint the extra duty positions as noted on the attached. May I have a motion to accept these positions? Thank you, Martha. A second?
Yeah.
Thank you, Colleen. Discussion.
I just want to say, I pulled this off of the consent agenda. I realized my wife's name is in there and ethical questions pop in my head, so I will be abstaining from this vote.
Appreciate that.
Are we supposed to vote?
Yeah.
I didn't see anything. Bonnie, yes.
Want me to say it?
I didn't pop up.
Dylan, can you hear me? Can you vote?
Who's watching The Voice? Tell me what's happening, John. Tim's keeping us here.
We see your lips moving.
2 in a row.
Oh, my.
5 yes. Okay. 5 yes, 0 no, 1 abstention. The motion passes. Thank you. Creation of positions. Upon recommendation of the superintendent, create positions noted below using the funds allocated from the American Rescue Plan. And you see those positions. May I have a motion to accept these? Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Martha. Discussion. I have a question, 2 actually. Number 1, Dana, you're okay with this, right?
Coming through is basically using ARP, so it doesn't even touch the budget.
Okay.
Cross that bridge when we get.
Okay. Secondly, are benefits covered under this as well?
No, it is.
Okay, so it's not a, we'll cover the salary, you cover the benefits type of thing.
What about
It's all
tenure?
inclusive.
Do people get tenure in this?
No,
Okay.
not, it depends on their appointment,
Okay.
because both their tenure area and the length to which they're appointed. So
Okay.
there's not, for a majority of these positions, there's no path to tenure. And they wouldn't satisfy the time requirement for that either.
Okay, so the only permanent one here is the IT tech.
But yeah, so not paid for through ARP this year, but the need is manifest for budgeting
Okay.
in all years thereafter.
I've done a little informal poll of individuals and it's it's heavily weighted towards we need another IT person in this district, so.
Not a full-time IT person in this.
Right, so, all right, if nothing else, please vote.
I just wanted to say
Sure.
thank you to Tim, Dana, and all the administrators for all the extra work you had to do
Yeah.
on top of all the extra work to get ready for the school year.
Thank you.
This is obviously right at the, under the wire, so thank you for all the extra work you guys did.
And well done work.
6 yes.
Yes, 0 no. CSE retirement, CSEA retirement upon recommendation of the superintendent, accept the retirement of Dave Anderson, bus driver, effective June 30th, 2022. May I have a motion to accept this retirement? Colleen,
I'll second it.
Oh, we should let Joni second it.
Joan, you're third. That's okay. No.
Yeah.
Any comments, statements? Sad to see him leave.
Just if Mr. Anderson is watching, thank you for your service since 2007. Fulfilled many roles for the district as a bus driver, dishwasher, and member of the grounds crew. We hope your retirement planning goes well.
Thank you.
Very verbose.
6 yes.
Yes, appreciate that. 6 yes, 0 no, the motion passes. Second read and adoption of code of conduct. Yes, appropriately, we'll have a motion and then discuss it. May I have a motion to accept the code of conduct? Thank you, Daniel. And Colleen. Discussion? Is a question for you all. Are you comfortable passing the code of conduct with the discussion that took place tonight? I believe we would have, we are not approving the dress code. Or are we?
I
Yes,
think we can.
we can.
As parents said,
There's,
it's not materially changing.
the dress code is not changing. It's the other aspects of the dress code that change. So we're changing it with the understanding that we're moving forward with a subcommittee to work on the dress code policy. So, okay. Everybody okay with that? Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have a way to open up the voting, something, no.
Okay.
And vote for this one.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Opposed? The motion passes 6 yes, 0 no. Anti-bullying proclamation. October is anti-bullying awareness month. With this resolution, the board is being asked to make a public statement against bullying. And so the recommended action is upon the recommendation of the superintendent, approve the attached anti-bullying proclamation. May I have a motion for this proclamation, please? Thank you, Martha. Second?
Yeah.
And any discussion?
Yes, I've got a question about the anonymous alert system. That's for students, and I don't know much about it other than I'm wondering if this might create some type of a situation that often exists in CPS with people anonymously calling up on their neighbors or, in a divorce situation where a husband calls up on the wife and makes up a story and they can remain anonymous. And in my industry, dealing with CPS workers from Essex or Franklin County or even from the state, they spend the majority of their time investigating those types of anonymous things that have no merit. So are we opening up kind of another Pandora's box where we're encouraging students to be anonymous, but how many of this will be legitimate and how many will be just, I'm getting even and going to, I don't know, it's a concern. And I'm just wondering, how much of this could be damaging of a child that really didn't do anything, but so-and-so wants to get even because they weren't invited to a sleepover. So I'm going to send in an anonymous alert. And I don't know, I think it's a little concerning, but.
We've actually had it, and we've had it for about 5 years now.
No, I didn't
anonymous alert. And you're right, when it first was rolled out, we had that occasion of, oh, I want to put in a complaint
Yeah.
because I didn't like the pizza today, type of deal. But those were kind of that initial, and they said that that typically happens when you roll out a system like this, you're going to get that bump of kids behaving that way, but then it settles down, and over the years, there's been more legitimate concerns being raised through the system than just throwing up false claims. Every so often you'll get something, but it's really not being abused, if you will, of the system. I think over the last couple of years, because of COVID and stuff like that, it has kind of gone by the wayside in terms of being an avenue for someone to express concerns. But the way it's set up, when I was at high school here, it would come to me and Connie Handmaker, so that we would filter and address it and then push it on. Not once was it like, oh, there's a bomb in the building, there's a gun in the building, nothing like that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Someone is being bullied, someone is being picked on. There was legitimacy.
Okay, no, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
6 yes, 0 no, the proclamation passes. Special ed is consent unless there's questions on the October 5th packet. And if not, good at the cause, any? No. Okay. Adjournment phase of the meeting, next meeting locations are October 5th. We move the meeting back to the boardroom here in Lake Placid from Wilmington due to COVID restrictions. And then you have a list of the remaining meetings right into the holiday season. Always is eye-opening. Old agenda items is the board retreat. Not sure if we want to discuss that this evening or make that an agenda item next time.
I have an idea.
Okay,
I think Colleen and I should talk about it and come back to the board with,
okay, perfect.
is that okay with you, Colleen?
It is, as long as it's not the typical type of retreat. Because I just can't-
Did the auditorium for you?
Yeah, no, I'm into something much more outdoorsy and low-key.
Okay. So Colleen, Martha and Colleen will work on that and get back, report to the board. So we'll put that on the next agenda.
Discussion item.
Yes. Any new agenda topics? All right, they have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Moved.
Okay, you got those, Karen? Very good.
8:45.
Nope, that's inaccurate. It's 8:30.
Somewhere between
Marathon
8:32
meetings
and
now.
8:45. 15-ish, yeah. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Joan.
Thanks, Joan.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.